You don't lack confidence. That's the lie you've been fed. What you lack is containment. You leak energy, intention, approval, and presence the way a cracked vessel leaks water. Slowly, invisibly, but constantly. You walk into rooms already negotiating your value before anyone has challenged it. Your posture asks permission. Your smile arrives before joy. Your words rush ahead of your thoughts like scouts begging the terrain to accept you. And the room feels it, not consciously, instinctively. Human beings are not cruel by default, but they are exquisitely sensitive to weakness. Not moral weakness, structural weakness. The kind that says, I need you to like me so I can feel whole. When that signal is broadcast, something ancient switches on. Respect drains. Curiosity dies. You are filed away as safe, predictable, non-threatening, a known quantity, a background object. Like furniture that once impressed but is now just there. This is why the nice man is invisible. Not because kindness is wrong, but because unguarded kindness is loud about its need. It begs for safety through compliance. It says, I won't hurt you, so please don't hurt me. That is not virtue. That is a survival reflex dressed up as morality. And survival reflexes do not command respect. They invite management. There is another type of presence. You felt it before. Someone enters a space and nothing obvious changes, yet the air tightens. Conversations recalibrate. People sit straighter. No announcement is made, but attention drifts toward gravity. This presence doesn't seek approval. It doesn't perform. It doesn't rush to explain itself. It simply exists, like a mountain that doesn't care whether you admire it or not. This is terrifying confidence. Not loud, not aggressive, not emotional. Terrifying because it is opaque. You cannot read it. You cannot predict it. And what cannot be predicted cannot be controlled. Machiavelli understood this centuries before psychology gave it a name. He wasn't interested in self-esteem or affirmation or feeling good in the mirror. He was interested in power, how it forms, how it leaks, how it collapses. He knew that love is fragile because it is voluntary. It depends on mood, memory, convenience. Respect rooted in awe, however, behaves like gravity. It doesn't ask permission. It simply pulls. This is not about becoming cruel. It is about becoming sovereign, about replacing reflex with choice, about removing the inner servant that keeps asking, is this okay, before every movement. Because the moment you ask that question, you have already surrendered authority. What follows is not motivation. It is an autopsy. We are cutting into the habits that drain your power. The unconscious gestures, the unnecessary words, the emotional disclosures given to people who have not earned access. Each one seems small. Together, they bleed you dry. And when power leaks slowly, you don't feel weaker. You just feel overlooked, underestimated, oddly ignored. Here is the paradox. You are not weak because you lack strength. You feel weak because your strength has no container. Imagine a high-pressure system with no walls. The energy dissipates into the air. Now imagine that same pressure sealed, focused, held. It becomes force. It becomes movement. It becomes inevitable. Terrifying confidence begins the moment you stop trying to be liked and start tolerating being misunderstood. Most men cannot cross this threshold because it costs them something they secretly crave: warmth, familiarity, being one of the guys. When you step into containment, people don't relax around you anymore. They measure themselves. They watch their words. The casual ease disappears, replaced by something colder but far more valuable: respect. This is why there is a warning at the door. If you want comfort, turn back now. Comfort is cheap and abundant. It is the currency of the forgettable. But if you are ready to trade warmth for gravity, if you are ready to move from being included to being accounted for, then stay. Because what you are about to dismantle is the nice man. Niceness is not kindness. Kindness is chosen. Niceness is automatic. Niceness smiles to prevent friction. It agrees to avoid tension. It fills silence because silence feels like judgment. Niceness is terrified of being misinterpreted, and in trying to control perception, it hands control to everyone else. The world rewards the man who can sit inside tension without dissolving. This doesn't mean hostility. The terrifying man is often polite, measured, civil. He holds doors. He listens. He speaks calmly. But behind the eyes there is a wall. Not anger. Not resentment. Distance. You sense immediately that his behavior is not a plea. It is a standard. Cross it, and something changes. Not into chaos, into ice. Ice is what freezes games. When you stop signaling submission, people get uncomfortable. They ask if you're okay, if you're upset, if something's wrong. What's wrong is that they can no longer read you. You have closed the book they were skimming without permission. That discomfort is the first sign of reclaimed power. Think of yourself as a lighthouse that has gone dark. The ships don't feel safe anymore. Not because you attacked them, but because they lost their reference point. They circle, they hesitate, they adjust. This is where confidence stops being a feeling and becomes architecture. And this is only the first incision. The moment you stop leaking power through your expressions, your words become dangerous. Not because they're sharp, but because they're rare. Most people talk the way insecure investors trade. Too fast, too often, trying to manage anxiety rather than maximize outcome. They rush to respond because silence feels like loss, like judgment, like exposure. But silence is not empty. Silence is pressure. Watch two insecure people talk and you'll see panic disguised as conversation. They overlap. They interrupt. They fill every gap like air rushing into a vacuum, not because they have something to say, but because they're terrified of what might happen if they don't. Silence forces self-awareness. And most people cannot stand being alone with themselves for even 3 seconds. The Machiavellian mind does the opposite. He creates the vacuum. When you stay silent after a question just 2 or 3 seconds, something subtle but profound happens. The other person's brain starts spinning. Did I say something wrong? Am I being judged? Was that question stupid? Their certainty fractures, and in that fracture, power shifts. You haven't said a word, yet the frame has moved in your favor. This is why silence terrifies more than aggression. Aggression is readable. Silence is not. When you do speak, you speak slowly. Not theatrically, not artificially, simply without urgency. Fast speech signals fear. Fear of being interrupted. Fear of being ignored. Fear that your words are not valuable enough to hold the room. Slow speech says the opposite. I expect to be heard. I am not chasing this moment. I own it. Think of a king issuing a decree. He doesn't rush. He doesn't over-explain. He speaks as if time itself has adjusted to his cadence. His pauses carry as much meaning as his words. And when someone interrupts you, this is crucial. You do nothing dramatic. You don't raise your voice. You don't fight for dominance. You simply stop. You let the silence land on the interruption like a weight. The room feels it. The rudeness becomes visible. The interrupter usually stumbles, apologizes, or trails off. Then you continue exactly where you left off, at the same volume, with the same pace. You didn't compete. You demonstrated ownership. Next comes the most difficult starvation: validation. External validation is the golden calf of modern psychology. Likes, compliments, praise, reassurance. Most men are addicts without realizing it. Their self-esteem is publicly traded. A compliment inflates it. An insult crashes it. Whoever controls the feedback controls the man. This is why approval seeking is the opposite of confidence. If I can raise or ruin your day with a sentence, I own you. Your emotions are on a string, and my words are the hand pulling them. Terrifying confidence begins at emotional zero. Not numbness, not apathy. Neutral sovereignty. An internal fortress where your self-perception is decided inside, not negotiated outside. When someone praises you, you register it without feeding on it. When someone insults you, you register it without defending against it. Neither moves the needle. I know what I am. That sentence is the end of manipulation. Most social interactions operate on a barter system. I validate you, you validate me. When you step out of that economy, you become a glitch. People try harder. They provoke. They test. They attempt to elicit reaction because reaction restores control. This is where most men fail. When challenged, the instinct is to explain, to clarify, to defend. But defense implies injury. Explanation implies authority in the accuser. You've accepted their frame without realizing it. The terrifying man does neither. If accused of arrogance, the insecure man argues. The dangerous man shrugs. Okay, or better, I've been called worse by better people. Then he returns to his work. No heat, no drama. Boredom. Nothing dismantles a narcissist faster than irrelevance. Because bullies and manipulators don't feed on resistance, they feed on engagement. When you deny them emotional supply, their weapons rust in their hands. Now the body must align with the mind. Your posture is not cosmetic. It is communication. A hunched body broadcasts defensiveness. Tight limbs broadcast fear. Shrinking is a biological confession of inferiority. Expand. Open posture exposes the chest and stomach, the most vulnerable areas. In a fight, you protect them. In social dynamics, exposing them signals absence of fear. It says, I don't need to guard myself from you. Sit with space. Stand grounded. Weight evenly distributed. Take up the room you occupy without apology. And the eyes, this is where prey reveals itself. Most people scan. Darting eyes. Checking reactions. Looking for threats, approval, exits. This is animal behavior. Deer scan. Rabbit scan. Lions focus. Train your eyes to move slowly. When you look, look fully. When you shift your gaze, do it deliberately. Stillness in the eyes creates unease because it signals certainty. And when you walk, walk with vector. Have you noticed the awkward hallway dance? Two people approach. Both hesitate. Both apologize. The man without direction yields. The dangerous man picks a line and walks it. He looks past, not at. Physics and psychology agree. The object with greater momentum dominates space. When your movement has purpose, others feel it before they think it. They move. It isn't arrogance. It's trajectory. You have somewhere to go. Most people don't. And this is where your presence begins to feel inevitable. Power doesn't announce itself through force. It announces itself through absence. Most men misunderstand this. They believe attention equals value. That being present, responsive, available, proves importance. So they answer every message immediately, say yes to every invitation, stay late even when bored, explain even when not asked. They flood the market with their presence and then wonder why their value collapses. Supply and demand is not just economics, it is social law. When you are always available, you are never missed. When you are never missed, you are never respected. Machiavelli understood this instinctively. He advised the ruler to be visible, but distant, known, but not familiar. Familiarity erodes awe. Awe is the soil where authority grows. This is the fifth incision: withdrawal of supply. In every interaction, romantic, professional, social, the person most willing to walk away holds the leverage, not because they are cruel, but because they are free. Fear of loss is the invisible chain around your neck. The moment you fear losing someone, they own you. Your behavior shifts. You negotiate against yourself. You tolerate what you shouldn't. The terrifying man practices exit. He leaves the party while it's still fun, ends the conversation while interest is high, hangs up first. Not rudely, cleanly. He creates incomplete loops, unfinished sentences in the minds of others. Where is he going? What does he have that's more important? Mystery blooms in the vacuum. Do not explain your exits. I have to go. Why? I have things to do. That's it. The weak man provides itineraries. He turns his absence into a confession. Laundry, errands, mundane explanations that collapse mystique. The dangerous man vanishes into purpose. Purpose does not require justification. This applies emotionally as well. Oversharing is modern submission. Trauma dumping is not intimacy. It is exposure without leverage. Every secret you give away becomes a handle. In a world addicted to disclosure, restraint becomes dominance. Keep your cards close. The man who knows everything about you owns you. The man who knows very little is forced to respect the space around you. But withdrawal alone is a tactic. And tactics without foundation rot. This brings us to the sixth law, the one that separates imposters from rulers. Competence. Everything before this, silence, posture, distance, can be mimicked. But without substance, it collapses. If you are incompetent, your silence isn't mysterious. It's awkward. Your stillness isn't powerful. It's empty. Your restraint becomes creepy instead of commanding. Your nervous system knows the truth before your mouth does. If you haven't built anything, mastered anything, endured anything difficult, your brain whispers it to you. No amount of affirmations will silence that voice. Confidence is not belief. It is evidence. The surgeon doesn't panic because his hands have been there before. The general doesn't rush because he studied the terrain. Machiavelli didn't tell princes to act like rulers. He told them to study war, history, strategy, to understand systems, to develop an independent mind. If you rely entirely on others for insight, you are easily overthrown. Terrifying confidence comes from being dangerous in at least one domain. Not violent, capable. You solve problems, you see patterns. You stay calm when complexity rises. When you speak, it lands because it's considered. When competence meets silence, something rare forms. Trust under pressure. In crisis, people don't look to the loudest voice. They look to the stillest one, the one who doesn't flinch, the one who seems already ahead of the chaos. That man becomes the axis. But there is one final gate most men refuse to pass, the willingness to be the villain. You have been conditioned to fear labels: selfish, cold, arrogant, difficult. You avoid boundaries not because they're wrong, but because you don't want the reputation that comes with them. Here is the truth Machiavelli wrote between the lines. If you live intentionally, you will be cast as the antagonist in someone else's story. It is unavoidable. Choose your work, you disappoint your friends. Choose your discipline, you disappoint the indulgent. Choose your self-respect, you disappoint those who benefited from your compliance. The terrifying man accepts this without resentment. He does not try to convince parasites that he is a good host. He removes them, calmly, without speeches. Can you help me this weekend? No. That's selfish, if that's how you see it. And no defense, no justification, no emotional leakage. You do not owe the world access to your life. You owe your potential the conditions to grow. This is where most people break. Guilt surges. The inner servant screams, "Fix it, explain, smooth it over, let him scream." He is dying. Because what replaces him is not cruelty, it is sovereignty. And once sovereignty locks in, the world rearranges itself around you. The transformation never announces itself. It begins quietly, almost invisibly, in the geometry of your behavior. You walk a little slower. You answer a little later. You speak a little less. You stop smiling on autopilot. You stop apologizing for existing. None of this feels powerful at first. It feels wrong, cold, almost antisocial. That discomfort is the servant dying. For years, that servant kept you safe by keeping you small. He smoothed edges. He anticipated reactions. He made sure no one was upset, even if it meant betraying you. When you withdraw his control, he panics. He tells you people will hate you, that you're being weird, that you're ruining everything. Ignore him. What actually happens is subtler and far more important. The social temperature changes. The playful banter fades. The casual disrespect disappears. People stop patting you on the back and start looking you in the eyes. They measure their words. They wait for yours. You didn't become scary. You became solid. Most people are fragmented. Pieces of childhood, pieces of trauma, pieces of expectation. They shift personalities depending on who's watching. When they encounter someone unified, someone whose behavior doesn't bend for approval, it unsettles them. Not because you're dominant, but because you remind them of their own dissonance. This is the source of the fear. Not fear of harm, fear of contrast. A whole man is a mirror most people avoid. This is why Machiavelli wrote for the few. He wasn't offering comfort. He was offering clarity. He knew power belongs to those who can endure the isolation that comes with self-command. When you stop performing, you lose the crowd, but you gain alignment. Alignment creates gravity. Now the final synthesis begins. Confidence is not emotion. It is structure. A system of habits that remove volatility from your presence. When you walk into a room, nothing spikes. Nothing drops. You are regulated. Predictable in values. Unpredictable in response. This balance is what terrifies. People fear what they cannot emotionally manipulate. They fear men whose reactions are not accessible. They fear those who cannot be rushed, guilted, provoked, or flattered into submission. You are no longer reactive. You are positional. Think of yourself as an immovable object in a river of driftwood. Everything else flows around you: trends, moods, outrage, desperation. You don't fight the current. You outlast it. Over time, others orient themselves using you as reference. This is leadership without declaration. And now comes the final test. Restraint in victory. When people start treating you differently, more cautious, more respectful, you will feel the temptation to explain yourself, to soften the edge, to reassure them you're still the same. Don't. You are not the same. You have not become cruel. You have become precise. Your kindness now has boundaries. Your warmth is selective. Your attention is earned. This is why your presence feels heavier. Scarcity plus competence creates inevitability. When you speak, people listen because they know you didn't speak to hear yourself talk. Your silence has become a signal, and silence, when intentional, is never empty. It is filled with implication, with possibility, with threat, not of violence, but of consequence. This is what Machiavelli meant when he spoke of fear rooted in respect, not terror of punishment, but awareness of limits. People know where they stand with you, and they know not to cross certain lines. You didn't enforce them with anger. You enforced them with consistency. At this stage, the world will try one last move. It will test whether this is a phase, whether you'll collapse back into accessibility. Old dynamics will resurface. People will push boundaries just to see. This is the crucible. Hold. Do nothing differently. Don't explain. Don't escalate. Don't accommodate. Let reality teach the lesson for you. Consistency is louder than confrontation. Over time, the tests stop, not because people love you, but because they understand you. And understanding your limits is the foundation of respect. You are no longer a social participant. You are a fixed point. And now, only one thing remains. This is where the awakening happens. Not in applause, not in validation, in silence. The kind of silence that follows when the world realizes you are no longer negotiating your existence. When you wake up one morning and feel it, not confidence as a mood, but confidence as weight. Density, like your thoughts have stopped floating and started sinking into place. You don't feel excited. You feel settled. This is the final shift, from performance to command. Most men think confidence is something you project outward. A voice, a posture, a look. But what they're really doing is asking for permission to be taken seriously. True confidence works in reverse. It pulls the world toward it. It doesn't announce. It allows. At this stage, you no longer need to remind yourself of principles. Your behavior has reorganized itself. You walk slower without trying. You pause before speaking without counting. You don't smile unless something actually moves you. Your no lands clean. Your yes carries weight. People begin to feel watched, not by your eyes, but by your awareness. And awareness is unsettling. Why? Because awareness exposes games. When you are fully present, fully sovereign, you stop participating in unconscious exchanges. You don't trade energy for approval. You don't trade truth for peace. You don't trade access for belonging. You simply are. And most people don't know how to relate to that. They are used to frictionless men. Men who explain. Men who reassure. Men who soften. When those behaviors disappear, the illusion collapses. They're forced to deal with you as a reality, not a role. This is why some will drift away, not because you rejected them, but because you no longer feed the version of themselves that needed you small. Your stillness starves their entitlement. Your boundaries expose their dependency. Your silence becomes a mirror they don't want to look into. Let them go. A man who cannot tolerate your sovereignty was never aligned with your growth. Here is the final truth Machiavelli understood and most never grasp. Power is not about dominating others. It is about eliminating the need to be dominated. The servant needed approval to feel safe. The sovereign creates safety internally. The servant asked, "Do they like me?" The sovereign asks, "Does this align?" One question leaks power, the other consolidates it. This is why confidence is a weapon, not because it harms, but because it protects. It kills the servant. It guards the kingdom. And kingdoms are not loud. They are defended by walls, not noise. They are governed by order, not emotion. They don't chase recognition. They endure. From this point forward, your task is simple, but not easy. Maintain containment. Speak only when it adds clarity or consequence. Move only when it serves direction. Offer warmth selectively. Withdraw without drama. Return without explanation. Let your actions be legible and your intentions unreadable. This balance creates awe. Awe is the emotion people feel when they sense scale beyond their control. When they realize they cannot rush you, cannot corner you, cannot provoke you into revealing more than you intend. They don't fear what you'll do. They fear that you don't need to do anything at all. That is terrifying confidence. Not sharp, not aggressive, absolute. You are no longer here to be understood by everyone. Understanding is cheap. You are here to be respected by reality. And reality respects structure, discipline, competence, and restraint. Tomorrow morning, you don't change everything. You change one thing at a time. You walk slower. You wait before answering. You let silence finish its work. You don't apologize for space. You don't chase resolution when ambiguity gives you leverage. The inner servant will protest. Let him. He was useful once. He kept you alive. But he cannot take you further. What replaces him is not cruelty. It is authorship. You become the author of your reactions, the editor of your words, the gatekeeper of your energy, the architect of your presence. Most people live as drafts, revised endlessly by others. You are becoming a final version, and final versions don't ask to be chosen. They are. This is the moment you stop blending in and become a landmark, a fixed object others orient around, a reference point, not because you demanded it, but because your existence has become coherent. Machiavelli never wrote for the masses. He wrote for the few who could stomach responsibility without applause, who could carry power without performing it, who could be misunderstood without collapsing. The question was never whether this path works. The question is whether you can endure it. Because once you cross this line, there is no going back to being harmless. And that is exactly the point. And now, the final separation happens. Not between you and the world, but between who you were and who you can no longer pretend to be. From this point forward, you will notice something subtle but irreversible. You will feel less urgency to explain yourself, less hunger to be seen, less need to correct misunderstandings, not because you've become numb, but because your center has moved inward. You no longer orbit other people's reactions. You generate your own gravity. This is when people begin to feel you before you speak. Your presence will create pauses. Your silence will stretch conversations. Your decisions will feel final, even when you say very little. Some will admire it. Some will resent it. Most will never understand it. That is not your problem. Understand this clearly. Terrifying confidence is not about intimidation. It is about non-negotiability. You are no longer emotionally accessible to manipulation. You are no longer rushed by other people's chaos. You are no longer shaped by environments that require you to shrink. You have become internally governed, and an internally governed man is dangerous in a world addicted to impulse. There will be moments when you feel alone, not socially, but existentially. You will see through conversations that once entertained you. You will feel the hollowness in dynamics that once defined you. This is not loss. This is shedding. Power always feels lonely at first because it removes the illusion of belonging that came from compliance. But something replaces it. Clarity. Your time sharpens. Your focus deepens. Your standards rise without effort. You no longer chase improvement. You eliminate weakness. You no longer react to disrespect. You outgrow the source. You don't argue your worth. You live in a way that makes the question irrelevant. This is what it means to rule yourself. Not loudly, not violently, but absolutely. Most people will spend their lives asking permission from society, from fear, from the past. You are done with that. You are not here to be approved. You are here to be aligned. And alignment is the rarest form of confidence because it cannot be faked, borrowed, or stolen. It can only be built slowly, quietly, ruthlessly. So carry this with you. Confidence is not something you feel when things go well. It is something you become when nothing moves you off your axis, when praise doesn't inflate you, when criticism doesn't penetrate you, when silence no longer scares you. At that point, you don't just command respect. You reshape the room. And once you know how to do that, you will never walk through the world the same way again.